Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Craig, a software engineer in the UK, and in this video we're going to add 5 extensions to VS Code to extend its capability and to make our own lives as developers a lot easier. These extensions are, in no particular order, Live Server, Indent-rainbow, Bracket Pair Colorizer 2, Prettier Now and WakaTime, and I'll run through each of these one by one to explain what they do and why we need them. So my favourite thing about VS Code happens to be the way that you can add and make use of hundreds of extensions. There's a huge community making and consuming extensions, and it's become one of the most important features arguably of VS Code's popularity among developers. VS Code, if you don't know, is a cross-platform text editor, and according to the Stack Overflow Developer Survey, it is the most widely used text editor by web developers at the moment. VS Code has a dedicated marketplace for extensions, which you can find at marketplace.visualstudio.com. You can reach the marketplace by going to the VS Code website and clicking on extensions here at the top. I'll also put the link underneath for you. Better still, within VS Code itself there is a user interface for searching, installing, enabling, disabling and deleting extensions. So we'll start here and we'll look up the extensions that we need in the user interface. We get to it through this icon here at the side, and in here you have 3 sections. Enabled, which obviously shows which extensions that you're currently making use of. For the purposes of this video, all of the extensions that I normally use day to day have been disabled, with the exception of WakaTime, which is tracking my metrics, but I'll get to WakaTime in a short while and explain it fully, and Atom Keymap. And Atom Keymap is an extension that I use just because I was a previous user of the Atom text editor, and when I switched to VS Code, I wanted to make use of the same keyboard shortcuts that I was used to using with Atom. So the extensions that I have disabled are under this disabled tab here at the bottom. You can easily re-enable them and bring in and out whichever extensions you need for any given project. The third tab is the recommended tab, in which VS Code will show you recommendations based on the extensions that you've been using or those that are currently popular with other developers that use similar extensions to you. The very first extension I'm going to show you is called Live Server. So I'm just going to go to the top of the extensions user interface here and I'll search for that. It's this one here at the top by Ritwick Day. We see it has well over 2 million installations and maintains a 5-star rating from users. I use this extension when building projects that may be mostly HTML and CSS, or even a project which uses preprocessors like less and Sass, or when working with vanilla JavaScript, which just means plain JavaScript without any additional frameworks or libraries involved. We'll get onto JavaScript and the ecosystem around the language in a later video though. But anyway, Live Server launches a development local server with live reload feature for static and dynamic pages. So what does this mean in plain English? Well, it means that when we are running Live Server, any changes made to files will be automatically visible in the browser without the need to refresh. Let's have a look. So first I need to install it. Well, I already have Live Server installed, but I have it temporarily disabled. So if I was going to install it, I'll show you on one of the extensions below. I'd click install here and then reload to refresh VS Code. And it's that simple. I'll quickly uninstall that extension and go back to Live Server. In my case, to re-enable it, I click the gear icon here and then enable and reload, and I can go ahead and use Live Server. We aren't focusing on the code at all, but this is a simple bit of HTML that has an H1 or a heading tag, and this is a CSS file which will style that H1 tag with the color red. I also have a JavaScript file here for use later on. If I right click on the file in the Explorer panel over here at the side, I can select the option Open with Live Server. Now the file opens in the browser and any changes I make to it will be visible as soon as I hit save. There's no need to refresh the browser or anything like that. Live Server does the work for us. If I go to my CSS file and change that color being applied to the H1 to blue, for example, and hit save, we see the change is reflected immediately. If I do color green and save, again, the change is automatic. I can stop the server at any time by coming to the bottom of the editor and clicking this stop symbol. Once stopped, any changes I implement will not be automatically reloaded in the browser. So if I click to stop the server now, we see it goes offline. Now if I change the color of the H1 to orange, you can see I have saved the file when the circle in the Files tab at the top here changes to an X. So any file with unsaved changes in VS Code will display a circle here rather than the X. So if I save, we see no changes in the browser. All I need to do is to go live again, and then we will see the changes are implemented. If I stop it again, close the file, and I'll put an unserved version of the file back into the browser without Live Server running, I will have to manually reload the browser myself every time I want to see the changes I have made. So I'll make a change again, I'll hit save, and nothing happens in the browser. But if I come over to refresh Chrome, the change we made is shown. So hopefully you can see the advantages to setting up a server. So those changes, which will often be happening fairly quickly and regularly, happen automatically rather than, you make a change and reload, you make another change and reload. This can get quite frustrating and repetitive, as I'm sure you can imagine. So this live connection between text editor and browser is super helpful and much more efficient. Live Server also comes with some really cool and simple documentation, so you can have a look through that if and when you need to. Okay, so that's Live Server. The next one we'll take a look at is Indent-rainbow. Again, I have this installed but disabled for the video. But if I was going to install, I just click the green install button and then the reload button that appears after. I'm just going to enable it and reload. So looking at the documentation, this one is actually a really simple extension to make indentation more readable. So let's have a look at what I mean. I'll go to the HTML file and I'll add in some code. So this is going to be an Emmet shortcut, and Emmet is really cool, and I'll cover it in the next video. So let's not concentrate on the Emmet shortcuts for now, just on the indentation of the HTML. So I'll type nav, angled bracket div, angled bracket ul, angled bracket li times 5, and then nav link and a $sign. And you'll see here that this is an Emmet abbreviation window, and it gives me a look at what the resulting HTML of this shortcut is. So if I hit tab, Emmet will build that for us. So what we have is a section with a div nested inside of that, and an unordered list nested inside of that, and 5 list items. We'll open with Live Server so we can see what that looks like on the page. Nothing fancy here, but with all these nested elements, and trust me, they can build up, it's not easy to see what belongs where. I'll add a few more divs. I'll cut our content, put in a div, then paste our content into that. Now under the div containing the UL, I'll add another div with a link to Google. I'll make sure I add a target attribute as well, so it opens in a new window, and we will test that, and cool, that appears to be working. But you can see on the page the output is fairly simple. There's not much on there, a heading, a list and a link, but we have all this nested content, and it is beginning to get a little bit hard to see which div is which already. So imagine doing this with a full page of HTML for a big web page. This is where Indent-rainbow comes in. So I'll enable that and reload, and suddenly it's much clearer. Well, at least it is to me, which bit of code is which. It's much easier to read. So that's the second extension, Indent-rainbow, and I thoroughly recommend it. Again, it does have some pretty good documentation, and if you did want to, you can follow instructions on customizing the colors of the indentation to whatever you want. I've left it just as it is, as the defaults work totally fine for me. Some of you may prefer a different set of colors though, and you can access the settings by hitting Command or Control comma. You go to the extensions drop down and then the extension that you're looking for, and you make the changes in the workplace settings tab on the right hand side. I'll show this process in more detail with the next extension, and that same approach will work when changing the Indent-rainbow colors as well. So there's no point demonstrating it twice. I'll just demonstrate it with the next extension, which is called Colorizer 2. And again, just like Indent-rainbow, it is a really simple extension, but it's something that helps me a great deal and I get a lot of value out of it. It does exactly what you think. It color coordinates the brackets in your files to help you match them. So I'll go over to my JavaScript actually to show this. You don't need to know what any of this JavaScript code means. I'm just using JavaScript as it is a good way of demonstrating the use of brackets and the extension. Again, the code is not important, just the functionality of the extension. So what I have here is a JavaScript function which has another function inside of it, and inside of that second function we have a conditional statement. Each of the little bits of code have these curly braces, which here in this instance combine a set of statements in a block. It's fairly difficult to see at the moment what each individual curly brace corresponds to. It's quite easy to get lost or drown in this bracket soup. VS Code does have a feature actually where if I click on one curly brace, it will highlight the corresponding curly brace that goes with it. But brackets pair colorizer goes further. I'll re-enable the extension and you would install it as you would do with any normal extension. We'll reload and now you can see that it has actually color-coded the brackets for us, and visually it is a lot clearer. It doesn't just work with JavaScript, it's great with say a CSS preprocessor like Sass or less, where you might have files with lots of stuff nested and hundreds of lines of it. So this extension will really help you out in that case. It even gives us this line or path, I guess, to guide our eye to the matching bracket. If I make a mistake and forget to add a particular bracket, the colorizer will let me know by showing one of them in red as well. Again, we can go to the settings if we need to and add more colors or change the colors around to reflect our own preferences. So if we hit Command plus comma or Control and comma on Windows, it will open up VS Code's settings tab. We can open the extensions drop down and from there choose bracket colorizer. If we go down to colors, we can edit those in the settings.json file. JSON means JavaScript object notation, and it is essentially just a text file written with JavaScript objects. This here on the right hand panel is a JavaScript object, and these inside are properties which consist of key value pairs. So we have a key and its value. It's a basic JavaScript data structure, and again we will cover JavaScript objects in depth later on in another video. But in this JSON file, we can edit the colors used for the brackets or even add more colors if we so wish. So on the left, you will see the current settings that you can't edit. But if you go to the Workplace Settings tab on the right hand side, you can just copy the color array over and put in whatever values you like. If you know specific hexadecimal or RGB color codes, then that's great. So if I change just the top color for now, you'll see that even in the settings file, the colors of these brackets are updated to whatever we add. But we'll add purple, green, and orange. So if I save that now and go back to the file, we'll see those bracket colors have indeed been updated. It's as easy as that, and you can tweak these until your heart's content. I find that bracket pair colorizer, when used in conjunction with Indent-rainbow, is enough to help me keep on top of which code is responsible for which bit of an application, and I can find things really quickly even when I'm traversing through multiple documents in a large project. So these are two must-have extensions for me. So if you're indenting and keeping your code neatly laid out too, then that's even better to help you visually. If you're not keeping on top of indentation and keeping your code neat and tidy, then there's an extension for that too. So the next one we'll look at is an extension called Prettier. Prettier is a prettifier, or in understandable English, a code formatter, and it makes our code, well, prettier, I guess. Prettier Now is an improvement on an extension called Prettier Miscellaneous, which itself was an improvement on the original Prettier extension made by Esben Peterson. We install it like all other extensions by searching in the GUI or user interface and just adding it in. You can see that when we search, the original Prettier is actually the first option. This one that I'm recommending has fewer installations currently, but maybe because it's much newer, but it does have a higher rating, and that's because it takes the original extension and improves it. You can adjust the settings, but even if you just use the default, then they're good right out of the box. So we'll hit Command or Control comma to open the settings, go to the extensions drop down and select Prettier Now, and these are the settings. So you can do things like auto scroll down to where Prettier detects an error like a missing bracket or comma or a mistyped variable in your code, and then you'll be right there. You can space brackets out in objects and arrays to make them more readable. You can automatically add semicolons where they are needed, which is handy, as these must be the number one thing that is left out, and it can cause errors in JavaScript. One I like in Prettier Now is that you can pop in single quotes to replace double quotes for strings in JavaScript. Both single and double quotes will work in JavaScript, but it's more commonplace these days to use single quotes as it looks a lot cleaner. So if I go to my JavaScript file, I'll show that in action. So if I add a string and save that to a variable, let's call it letString, and we'll have that equal hello world. When I save, you'll notice double quotes switch out for single quotes, but you might ask, what about when I want to use double quotes inside of single quotes? Perhaps when the string is a quote of somebody saying something. Well, let's add another variable and have a look. So we'll put let quote, and we'll say, she said, hello everybody. And I'll purposefully leave off the semicolon as well. Now when I hit save, you see that Prettier recognized the doubles inside the singles and left them in place for us, which is pretty cool. If those were single quotes, it would of course result in an error, as JavaScript would think that she said is the string and the rest that follows it is a mistake. We can of course mitigate this by adding escape characters, which will clear the error. And you can see that even when I save, Prettier Now tidies this messier syntax up for me. I think Prettier's best feature though is the auto indentation that sorts everything out automatically for you. If I mess up all of the JavaScript, so it's all over the place, I'll just tab random stuff and move stuff around and space stuff out. And then when I'm ready, I will hit save, and it will just put everything back where it needs to be. Again, if I just put everything flat to the side without any indentation and then save, again, it will sort it out automatically for me. So there's a lot to like about Prettier Now, and I find that this plus Indent-rainbow plus brackets Colorizer is giving me much more readable and maintainable code. Again, the docs are great, so have a look through and have a play around with all of the different options. There's plenty in there to keep everyone happy, and of course we can't cover every single thing in this video, so please do have a play around. Okay, so this brings me to the fifth and final must-have recommended VS Code extension, and this is WakaTime. I won't spend a huge amount of time on this extension, as first I feel like I've gone on long enough already, and secondly it doesn't really aid you in editor while you're coding. What it does do is it gives you some metrics, insights and time tracking information about your coding activity while using VS Code. I've already got this installed, and by now you should be good to search for it and install it by yourself. Once you've done that, if you then go to the docs, it gives you the details on how to set it up. So follow these along, and when you've done that, head over to wakatime.com. I'll log in. I just usually log in with my GitHub details, and you get this cool dashboard that gives you all of these metrics and insights into your recent coding activity. And all of this is totally free. You don't have to pay anything for this. So you can see how much you've done over the last 7 days, how many hours coding you did on any given day. You can see the languages that you've been coding in, the text editors you've used. So that's VS Code all the way for me, as you can see. You can click the tab at the side and see the projects you've worked on and your commit history if you're using Git and GitHub. And there's also a leaderboard that shows you how many hours other users of the extension are putting in and where you fit in amongst them. The guy at number 1, as you can see, is putting in some insane hours, but you know, whatever floats his boat, I guess. So yeah, that's WakaTime. I find it incredibly useful, and I like to check it at the end of every week, and it serves as a reminder of the many projects that I'm juggling and the time commitment that I make to each. It also sends you an email every Monday morning with a summary and a rundown of everything you did the last week and how much time you spent coding. So yeah, it's a really good, handy extension to have and a good tool to keep on top of all of your projects and help you manage your time. Okay, so I think that just about covers it. That's my top 5 VS Code extensions. By no means is this an exhaustive and comprehensive list of all of the extensions that I regularly use, but these are the 5 extensions that I thought were worth talking about when thinking of people that are new to front-end development and are looking for a little bit of guidance as they stare down the many thousands of extensions that are available. I've come to use these over a long period of installing and uninstalling plenty of extensions, and these are the ones that I've settled on and have stuck with, and I hope you find them useful as well. What I didn't really touch on was the extensions that I use for JavaScript and React snippets, which again give us shortcuts to writing functions and components and things like that, but we'll cover these when we get onto the JavaScript stuff further on down the road. So thanks for watching. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you're finding the content useful. If so, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more cool content coming on the way. So I'll see you in the next video where we're going to take a deep dive into Google Chrome DevTools. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.